Hello, this is Debbie Q with the Right Shoe, and also my fabulous
It's me, Deb, again. And they said it wouldn't last, didn't
yeah.
they? And after the first one, it nearly didn't.
And now we can hear them so clearly. We love it.
Well, you've dragged me into the 21st century today, haven't you?
We're zooming.
Really lovely to be back on the Right Shoe. And I feel I'm chuffed that you've asked me to come back.
It's fabulous. The Murder at Bedtime with Lyndon is on YouTube and all podcasting platforms. Lyndon just recently did a two-parter.
I did a two-parter, which is very similar to the story we're going to do this evening, isn't it? Well, it's this evening here. It's not there, isn't it?
What's their names again? The guy? The names?
It was Leslie Molseed and Stephen Kishko. Leslie was the 11-year-old that was murdered, and Stefan was the guy who was sent to prison for 16 years, even though he didn't do it, which is very, very similar to the one we're following today, isn't it?
Wow, that is amazing. Next, we're going to be doing a British crime, but we did one more American, and when he said the Memphis 3, you know, it's been done a lot over here, but I'm telling you, the story it's a challenging one because I don't feel that it's ever been solved. I know there's some people that feel the West Memphis 3, so to speak, have done it, but we also wanted to not only talk about that, but also how it's true in all of this, the three boys, Stevie Branch, Christopher Byers, and Michael Moore, they all got kind of lost in the overwhelming response of these three men who were arrested for this crime. But so much more goes into this. And they did a long time. I mean, Damien Eccles was on death row, actually. The other two, I think, had gotten life in prison. Miss Kelly and...
that's absolutely right, Deb.
Yeah, Jason Bowen.
I've got to be honest. Being this yokel from UK, had never heard of the West Memphis 3 until my daughter, who is an avid Morbid fan.
Yes, shout out to Morbid.
Yeah, I mean, it took me ages to drag her away from Morbid long enough to listen to one of my episodes, but finally she did. But anyway, she actually told me about the West Memphis 3, and I spoke to you about it. Of course, you knew about that case,
right?
Even though it was not known to me. And I agree with you totally. The same way as I did with the Leslie and Stephen case, I did. The poor lads who were murdered don't seem to get much coverage. It seems to be the West Memphis 3 who, deserve the fact that they did that. But unfortunately, the three lads get left behind who were murdered, and they really need to be, I think their memories need to be kept up,
Yeah, just because the way they were found was so disgusting. It's whoever did this is a real, I have no words, a scum, crumb, sick sociopath. I mean, I don't understand this. I can never understand. I mean, murder in general is horrific, but when it's a child, it just makes no sense. I don't know how you can do that to a scared little kid. I just think they deserve the worst of the worst, whoever did this. But who did it? Do people still believe the West Memphis 3 have done it? I'm sure some do.
Well, I think it's good to explore that, and if we can do that in an unbiased way, I think that would be good. Because let's be sort of like certain on this. The West Memphis 3 haven't been found that they didn't commit the crime.
Right, that is true.
So they, and there are other people who could have committed it, but the horrific way in which this murder was committed, it would have to be somebody really evil to do, and to find three people that evil on the same evening is I would think it was very, very hard to do.
Yeah, I mean, that is true. It started out the evening of, it was in 1993 that these boys were found. 3 8-year-olds went out just to have fun, and maybe they were fishing. They were playing around. They were kids. They ran to the local pond They were reported missing, West Memphis, Arkansas, on the night of May 5th, 1993. The first report to the police was made by Christopher Byers' stepfather, John Mark Byers. His adopted father, I'm sorry. And about 7 p.m. They were allegedly last seen playing together. It was the evening. The initial police searches were limited, so friends and neighbors conducted the search. And then on the next day, a more thorough search was done, led by the Crendenton County Search and Rescue, canvassed all of West Memphis, but focused primarily on Robin Hood Hills, where the boys were reportedly last seen. They said that it was a massive search, shoulder to shoulder. Around 1:45 p.m., Steve Jones, an officer, spotted a black shoe floating in a muddy creek, and it led to a major drainage canal in Robin Hood Hills. A subsequent search of the ditch revealed the bodies.
Yeah, I have got a bit of information on that one, the information that I've found, Deb. It was the following day. I mean, the search was overnight, wasn't it? So it was the following day.
Right.
That they actually saw the trainer at 1 p.m. so in the afternoon. At which time Steve Jones, who was a parole officer.
Oh, okay, he was a parole officer.
He decided to climb in on all fours because it was only about two feet deep, and he went around feeling until he came across the first body.
Wow.
And he pulled out the first lad, and then he carried on and found the other two and pulled them out onto the side of the bank as well. Now, the only thing I've got to say about this is that he really shouldn't have done that.
What do you think was his mistake?
They should have rang for the coroner.
Immediately.
As soon as he found the bodies underwater, they should have been left there for the coroner to come and bring them out
you're
the water
right.
and check everything. But unfortunately, whether he thought he was doing the right thing, I don't know. But he pulled them out of the water, and then they were left in 72 degrees heat.
Oh, that's
naked.
a great point, Lyndon. I never thought about that. Why? Wow, he should have absolutely, yes.
He did get really castigated for it. I've got to be honest, because he left them out. They were left out there. I mean, I've got to say, Deb, I made the mistake, to me, of watching Paradise Lost. The first 30 seconds of that program is harrowing and will live with me forever, because I didn't realize that you got videos of that sort of crime scene that were put out on general TV, you know. So I don't want to see that again.
Yes, I agree.
But to see three lads who had been pulled out onto the side and they were just laying there while presumably the coroner has been called, and he took 2 hours to get there, and them lads are uncovered for 2 hours.
So, right away,
there was a mistake.
Bloating.
Right from the beginning.
Yeah. Oh. They were found hog-tied, stripped naked, hog-tied with their own shoelaces, their right ankles tied to their wrists. I remember I heard it was kind of almost a ritualistic tying, where they were like all in a row, so to speak.
Sorry, Deb.
No, tied to their left arms and legs. Some sort of weird tying where they were like tied ritualistically.
I think one of the funny things that they found, which was quite interesting, is that the two boys who drowned in the creek had a certain knot tying their feet and arms together, whereas the lad at the top, was that Stevie Branch or Chris Byers, the lad who was
the clothing that was mostly turned inside out, Christopher Byers.
I think it was Christopher Byers who actually died from blood loss rather than drowning, and he had.
Oh yes, you're correct.
Different knots.
Yes.
So there was 3 different types of knot used in the lads tying hogtied.
Yeah.
Which they thought was very significant at the time.
Yeah, that claim, prosecutions claim Byers' wounds were the result of a knife tack, and that he'd been purposely castrated. There's been some pathologists disagree with that. They think animals might have mutilated him. That's a debate left, but it was it was bad enough that the thing that stuck with me, I believe it was Stevie Branch's mother, when she fell to the ground. It was either Byers or Branch's mother fell to the ground. My heart bled for her. I cannot imagine an 8-year-old boy. That's your son. That's horrific. I mean, I don't know how you get through that. It really is a tragedy. The victims were just 3 8-year-old boys, all second graders at Weavy Elementary. They had achieved the rank of wolf in their local Club Scout pack, and they were best friends. They did everything together.
I mean, I did know one thing from the when the coroner did arrive and they started doing proper investigation, that they did use luminol on the bank and found quite an amount of blood on the bank. So they actually thought that the actual murder was committed there. The only other thing that I think they actually thought to themselves, the police, was that because it was 3 8-year-olds, it must have been more than one person. One person would not have been able to keep 3 8-year-olds and tie them all up. That would probably be pretty obvious.
Because, if he was figured someone's trying to tie these kids, one of them, I would have hoped, tried to run away. You know what I mean? Like, I agree, unless they had a gun and scared them, but that is kind of difficult. Even with 8-year-olds, that would be tough. And then to tie them ritualistically, I can agree with it being more than one person. And I guess that's how they originally were on the hunt. We can go however you want to because of so much stuff had happened after this, even after the boys were found.
Yeah. I mean, this is where
a lot of mistakes were made.
The guy who was in charge of the investigation. Now, this is Gary Gitchell, isn't it? And he's of the West Memphis police, and they've got absolutely no experience of murder at all in West Memphis. He is told that the Arkansas police will help him in his inquiry, but he doesn't want any help. He wants to crack it himself. And he decides straight away that it's something to do with the satanic panic, which is rife, that I've heard, in America at this time.
It was insane.
Late 80s, early 90s, was it?
Yeah.
And so it's rife with this satanic panic that's been brought up by people, and everything's about Satan. And of course, so they want some suspects, and of course, the first suspect that they can think of, which is brought up by Steve Jones, the parole officer, because for some reason this guy is obsessed with Damon Eccles.
Wow. And I just want to say real quick, because you brought this up, in America, it was 1984 or 85. Tipper Gore was married to Al Gore. She was infamous for starting in America the little tags, the advisory warnings on all heavy metal music. And there was a big thing. This is what I believe started the satanic panic. If you were into heavy metal, if you wore your hair long, all of a sudden you were a Satanist. And this Tipper Gore went so nuts with this that, she just wanted all rock music burned. And they had a huge thing where, like, they had Dee Snider from Twisted Sister. They had a lot of people who spoke eloquently and defended the right to, put out records. But Tipper Gore was the original one that I really believe started this satanic panic, because after that, everything was about Satan. And that's what started this crazed. I can literally pinpoint it back to that little moment when she started the advisories. But you're right. It became just ridiculous with this satanic panic.
No, well, that's very interesting because I don't know anything about this satanic panic, because it's interesting to put that in so that we get some sort of gauge about what was going
where
on.
It started.
So basically, if you were like a guy with dyed black hair, black eyeliner, black fingernails, wearing a black coat and a cross, you were straight away. You were being different. You were probably worshipping the devil, etc.
Exactly. And that's what it was. That's what people, and then when you even walk down the street, it was, oh, that guy is, I mean, in the larger cities, it was never much like that. But in the smaller towns, it was really bad. I've heard. I did not grow up in a small town, but people who I known who had said, Deb, everybody knew your name. And if you were different, which Damien Eccles did, and as we talked about, he didn't help himself because he was a bit of an asshole when he was younger. He didn't help his case any.
No, he really didn't, did he? I mean, he definitely had problems.
Right.
But he didn't help himself in the way he conducted himself when he was arrested or anything. I mean, he really was. And let's be honest, he wasn't a nice guy.
He was like a jerky kid.
So he brought a lot of it, on himself. He did have a lot of mental problems.
Yes, absolutely.
He was actually classed as disabled, so he couldn't work. With his mental problems. So he did have a lot of mental problems. He was schizophrenic and manic depressive and everything. So he had a lot of problems. But as I say, if you see any of the videos of him or anything, he really doesn't do himself any favors at all.
That's it. I was surprised because I had read the book that he wrote, and it was so well written, and he really comes off so well now that when I saw the videos of him as a kid, I was so shocked because I'm like, wow, he doesn't come off like that in the, I will get the name of the book, but it was by Damien Eccles, and it was right before he was released. And he just came off so well, and I thought, but when I looked at the video and he's laughing during court and he's making faces, and I'm thinking, oh, God, no wonder they had such a bad, it was called Life After Death. That was the name of the book. It is a great book. And it was solely about his experience or on death row. And then these people came along, and filmed that Paradise Lost. And that's when they shed light on the fact that the investigation, which I didn't even know that Steve Jones had pulled the kids out, it seemed to be flawed from the beginning.
Well, I mean, just going back to just a minute, I've just got the report up now. He was homicidal, suicidal, manic depressive, schizophrenic, and sociopathic. His mental health record was 500 pages long. So he was sent to a mental care hospital by court order by his parents, registering concern over his devil worship and witchcraft in 1992. And at school, he had a record of threatening fellow pupils and teachers. So this is telling you what sort of guy Damien Eccles was at the time. Wasn't the sort of guy you really wanted to, but as I said, none of this proves him to be a child killer.
Right.
And we're going by the evidence that went on these three lads, and there basically wasn't any apart from one bit, which we'll get to later, won't we?
Yes. And that's true. I mean, there, do we want to talk about the strange incident at the Mr. Bojangles here?
Well, yeah, I think the strange injury, but the thing is, Deb, I think that it's important because the police officer got called to that, the one that was already investigating the boy's disappearance, and she got taken away from that to go to Bojangles. But I do think, see what you think. You tell them the story, but it's been sort of like said it might be a red herring.
And that could be true because the thing that got to me, all right, when I first heard it, I thought, but then there was something curious that somebody said, and that was they said a disoriented black man came in with blood all over him. Now I'm thinking, honest to God, my thought after this was, well, maybe he got into a fight and then it just was completely unrelated. The problem is like you said, the police officer had gotten called to the scene, and for whatever reason, she did not go. They called a few times, and they said there is blood all over the walls. There's blood in the sink, like he was trying to wash himself off, and then he The guy got into a car and took off. Later, a hair identified as belonging to a black male was recovered from a sheet wrapped around one of the victims. Now, these two can be completely unrelated, but they might not be. And the issue is, for whatever reason, and this has been talked about on many other podcasts and shows, why did that police officer not stop and go in and at least collect some of the blood, unless there was such overwhelming need for help elsewhere that she didn't have time. I don't know how many police were on the force. I don't know what her story, something could have kept her. But to me, just running in and getting something from that bathroom would have helped, because then we could have had DNA now. We could have had something. Now that's just, it could be a red herring, absolutely. It's just that's lost. It's listed on one as a suspect, but there's nothing to compare it to. And that's a shame.
Yeah, it's very much a shame. I don't know about you, but I got the impression when I was watching this documentary that this young lady police officer was the only police officer working in
that's what it sounded like.
Night.
Yeah,
because she was all over the place.
Yeah,
she'd gone to one, she'd gone there, then she'd gone to Bojangles, then she was off somewhere else. She never seemed to stop. She never could get into one job because she was sent all over the place.
And that's entirely possible. She might have just been so overwhelmed, figured, well, he's not there now, let me get to the next place. That's totally possible. You never know what's on the other side until you talk to the person. I would be interested to see why, she had to run so fast. Now, how did they originally start with Miss Kelly? Did he approach the police or did they approach him, Jesse Misskelley?
I don't know. I think he must just been one of the people
that they kind of zeroed in on.
That they zoomed in on. Because, let's be honest, most of it was on Damien Eccles. And getting back to Damien again, I know.
Yeah, sure, no. Because, he's the main one that people think of.
He had evil tattooed on his knuckles. That didn't help. I suppose, but also his alibi that he was at home at the time of the murders never held up in court. He gave a load of names of girlfriends who he spoke to on the night of the murders, and a lot of those girls denied they'd heard from him. And his grandma also said he was out at 8 p.m. that night. Damien didn't help himself, telling lies about where he was at the time, so he probably didn't have an alibi. But, how we got round... the thing with Jesse Misskelley was he had a very, very low IQ.
It was only about 70, I heard.
There really is not really any proper evidence against these three until Jesse Misskelley is taken in to be interviewed. And he apparently was interviewed for 14 hours without any solicitor, without anything from his parents. Now, and at the end of it, he confessed to being part of the murder and gave up the two names he was with. Now, as you know, Deb, this is well strange. I can't get my head around this. Apparently, he gave so many different confessions. There was never anything proper in it. But also, he was the only one who had an alibi.
I know.
Really did. How this went any further, he was actually at a wrestling match. A wrestling match in a neighbouring town where loads of people swore they saw him at time of the murders.
That just goes to show you that's scary, because I remember seeing that horrible confession, and they were browbeating him, and he kept giving the wrong answers. Because he was saying like it was in the morning, and they're like, no, it was at night, correct? And he was saying, yeah. And then they kept saying, we'll let you go home if you just tell us what happened. And after 14 hours of a kid who has a low IQ and is scared, and as you said, we call it lawyers, you call them solicitors, who had no legal counsel. I mean, that's absolutely a tragedy. That's why anybody, if you get called by the police, don't say a word. You want a lawyer. That is the first thing you want is a lawyer or a solicitor. Don't say a word.
We've definitely agreed on that before this started, didn't we?
That
we never do anything without a solicitor.
You are not going anywhere. I am not saying a word because without that legal counsel, they can say whatever they want. They can twist things. When you have somebody representing you, it becomes a whole different ball game. Doesn't matter if you don't have the money. You want a lawyer. That is your right. Just get a lawyer. It is so important because that's how this I believe they just, like you said, had it in for Eccles, and they were just browbeating this poor Miss Kelly. I mean, even to this day, when you talk to Jason Baldwin, he says, I don't blame Miss Kelly. He said, they're pressuring you, and you'll just say anything to get that pressure off. It's not a good way to get to the truth of the matter because I know the pressure on them to get the person was huge. You have the whole world watching you, but it's just not the way to do it. And unfortunately, this happens so much. Everyone wants a case closed. And like you said, egos become involved. Egos become involved on the highest level. It's just sometimes, unfortunately, what happens. And I think ego had a lot to do in this case as well. The one guy wanted to be the one who solved the case. And it wasn't solved properly. There was so much that was not dragging them out of the water, not getting the DNA, tunnel vision with one set person, a false confession. And then these poor 3 kids were brutally killed. And I believe that their murderer never got caught. I truly believe that in my heart, whoever it might have been. And that's terrible. It really casts such a pale light, and it's something that's so forgotten about because when the 3 so-called West Memphis 3 got let out of jail, that was so amazing in itself. But unfortunately, the boys were forgotten, the little boys.
I don't know, before we get on to the arrest of the West Memphis 3, Deb, I wondered if you wanted to say anything about the 2 other lads, Chris Morgan and Brian Holland, who were in the frame for it just before they actually arrested the other 3. But they just, I mean, even though, they could have been in the frame for it, they just didn't really want to know, did they, the police?
That is unbelievable to me. They had a history of drug offenses and had abruptly departed for California 4 days after the bodies were discovered. They were known casually to the 3 murdered boys, having previously driven an ice cream truck. Because, yes, you often think, how did the perpetrators of this crime get the boys to come to them? How did they? And you're right. They never, that's absolutely true. Chris Morgan claimed to have a long history of drug and alcohol use along with blackouts and memory lapses and said that he might have killed the victims, but he quickly recanted this statement. But they were never, that's as far as it went. And that's a terrible statement to make. And then
honestly, yeah, I mean, he actually said that I possibly could have done, but I can't remember.
That's unbelievable.
And I mean, and they split the day after completely, and their names have never been brought back into it again. I find that very strange.
And when people leave right after a murder, it just doesn't bode well for. I mean, I think what could have happened. So Chris Morgan and Brian Holland are listed as suspects, but again, they never went further because they were hell-bent on, as you said, I believe it was Damian Eccles who they were hell-bent on. And the way he acted at the time was so inappropriate.
Yeah, I think so too. I think they got Jesse Miskelly in and they coerced him and, really rammed it down him that, Damian Eccles was involved in this, wasn't he? And just kept on and on and on about it until he said, I mean, he did come out with some things that could have been, which could have shown that he was involved by saying, the The other two were seeing to the lads, and one of them ran away, and I chased after him and brought him back. So Jesse was sort of like getting involved in it there. But there were so many things that he said wrong.
Yes.
And he made so many different confessions that were wrong. There was just hours and hours of him spouting stuff that he didn't know what had happened. And also, he only sort of said what they really said to him to say.
Exactly.
They coerced him all the way.
Yeah.
And in the end, this basically is the only evidence that took these. I mean, we've hardly talking about the other lad. Is it Jason Baldwin?
Jason Baldwin comes off so lovely in all his interviews. I'm like, how the heck did you ever get mixed up in this? I don't know. He just seems so sweet. I mean, I know sweet people do weird things, but I just don't know how he ever got mixed up in this. I guess because he was best friends with Damien Eccles at the time. And then Miss Kelly, in his fright, he was probably scared to death. He kept saying, I even remember when it came down to how they were tied. They were tied with the shoelaces, but he had said a rope or something. And they said, no, it was with the shoelaces. And then he says, oh, yeah, the shoelaces. Like, are you kidding me? I mean, really?
I mean, this lad should never have been interviewed without a responsible adult, at least. I'm talking about Jesse Muskelly now.
Oh, yeah.
Jesse Muskelly should never have been interviewed without an appropriate adult there to defend him, because he just didn't know what he was doing. And to name, probably not so much Damien, because he probably would have been in the frame anyway.
You're right.
There were people out to get Damien Eccles anyway.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if there was anything like this came up, he was going to be first in line. Jason Baldwin, I mean, he just looks like this really sort of...
I know.
Didn't know how he got roped into this.
His attitude is very good. He has a great attitude.
Yeah.
I always feel so bad for him, because he just comes, I don't know, every interview, I think, how the hell did you get involved in this? The people that did the interview, that Paradise Lost, they said like they would go to jail to visit them, and then they would leave and feel so bad, because I think they knew from the beginning something was wrong. Just period, the end, something was wrong. And to know that and not be able to do anything at first until all the celebrities got involved. And I've seen people making, who the heck's Johnny Depp and blah, blah, blah. But it wasn't Johnny Depp. It was just that he was in a better place to get more visibility towards the case. It wasn't him in general. It's just that he was Johnny Depp. And then they had the guy from Pearl Jam, Eddie Vedder.
Eddie Vedder, yeah.
Yeah, they just had a better... It's not that they were saying anything different. It's just that they were highly visible. So the visibility is important when you're trying to do something like this. I just seen a lot of knocks on Johnny Depp by who the heck's he, but he got visibility to the case. That's what they were trying to do.
Well, that's right. And I mean, it makes you wonder, doesn't it? It makes you wonder if anything had been done about it, if it hadn't been
exactly
put forward by Eddie Vedder and Johnny Depp and Patti Smith and people like that. I mean, what would have happened? They'd still be there probably.
Damien Eccles would probably be dead.
He was 2 weeks away from being put to death, wasn't he?
Wow. Yeah.
At
right.
one stage.
That's right.
So, luckily it did. I mean, when they actually they were arrested.
Yes.
Yeah, all three of them arrested, and they went to court for the murders. And as we know, Damien got death sentence.
Yes.
And the other two got life sentences without parole.
Yeah.
So they would have spent the rest of their lives in prison, and Damien would have been dead, as you say. So then we had the thing of all the celebrities coming forward, and then it turned into a big thing, and then it all got big. But even after that, their appeals were turned down year after year after year. It was ages before they actually got an appeal. And anyway, Deb, you take them through what happened next.
Well, with the appeal, You mean it was part of the Alfred plea?
Yeah.
Yeah. So one day, Jason Baldwin said that he was actually now he was a very well-behaved prisoner, and they gave him a lot of responsibility, and he was, I guess, in charge of like the schooling. So he said we were going to school to pick out who was going to be picked for the next semester. Like anybody that was up, like I guess well behaved, or, because you can get degrees and stuff in prison. So he said we were just picking out the names when a guy came in and said, "Your lawyer's here." And he said, "I knew, because normally you are known well in advance when your lawyer's coming, or your legal counsel. When your legal representation is coming, you know well in advance." They had never told him anything until that day. And he said, "I knew it was something big." So he goes into the room and the guy says, "How would you feel about getting out today?" And he said, "You just have to agree to this Alfred plea." Now, Jason Baldwin at first said, "No way." He said that because basically with an Alfred plea, you are stating that you feel that you're innocent, but you believe that the prosecution has enough to still claim you guilty. In their mind that you're guilty, but you're saying you're innocent. It really, honest to God, it's the prosecution's way of saving face, because they want this case closed. An Alfred plea means it's closed, it's them, but we agree there's enough to say they're innocent. They agree there's enough for us to say they're guilty. It's a terrible plea. But they did it ultimately because he said we did it for Damien, because Damien was going to die. And I couldn't, I didn't want that to happen. His lawyer was like, "I'm so proud of you for initially turning it down," because his lawyer knew he was not guilty, or he felt that he wasn't guilty. And they did accept the Alfred plea, which is it really is for the prosecution to save face. It's just an awful thing, but it's there. It's fortunate that some people do get it because it's what gets them out of prison. So they did take it and they were released. And that's when the producers of Paradise Lost were caught. They said they had a hell of a time trying to get to this big party that they were having, and they missed the actual Alfred plea. But the party that night, she said, the girl, the producer of that Paradise Lost, said it was so great to finally hug Damien Eccles and Miss Kelly and Jason Baldwin. That Alfred plea nags me, because they're never going to find out. Unless you believe it was those three gentlemen, we're never going to know what really happened. In their mind, the case is closed.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with the Alfred plea, which is definitely a United States thing, isn't it?
I hate it.
I've never.
It's horrible. A prosecutor came up with that. You can be assured.
Oh, wow. Honestly, I mean, our British justice system is
it's very different. Yes.
But that Alfred plea, I mean, that is just.
It's a joke.
It's a nothing plea, isn't it?
It's a joke.
You don't let people out, do you? If they're guilty. So I mean, if you are going to let them out because you've found that it was wrong, you've got to take the responsibility that you cocked up.
It's
absolutely mental for somebody to plead to say they're innocent. We're allowed to say we're innocent, but we're going to plead guilty so we can get out. Because the prosecution, the prosecution had no evidence.
None.
They didn't have the proof to keep him in. If you're in that situation where you've just done 18 years for something you didn't do, you're going to,
I would take it.
At least they didn't, at least they were given the option.
Yes.
That people must know the Alfred plea is crap. So they must know that the person who's getting out is just getting out by they're innocent. They must know that.
You're right. That's it. They're innocent. That the prosecution is doing that to save face. And that's all it is. Because, come on, it's the most ridiculous plea. Would they give Ted Bundy an Alfred plea? Come on.
My God. they do the same sort of thing here, Deb, but there isn't a plea. What happens here is that the person gets found innocent, and then the chief superintendent comes on the press stand and says, "We're not looking for anybody else for this crime." So the person who's just got found innocent is basically still guilty in their eyes, and probably mud sticks. You know what? Mud sticks.
Yeah.
Unless you have, like Stefan did in the Stefan and Leslie one, where actual evidence that he could not
have
in
done
any
it.
way, shape, or form have committed that crime and made everybody look terrible.
That was
as you know,
horrible.
I put all those people in my own scumbag corner. In this case, if the police are never, ever going to take it forward for look to anybody else, they will always be people who think they're guilty.
Do you have some of the evidence? I mean, what do they have? Any DNA? Do they have
they do have some DNA, don't they? But really, unsurprisingly, it's quite strange that the only DNA found at the crime scene was that of Terry Hobbs. And Terry Hobbs, his hair was found entwined in one of the shoelaces that was binding, hog tying the lads. Now, as we know, Terry Hobbs was the stepfather of Stevie Branch.
Yes.
And of course, as I say, his was the only DNA that was found at the crime scene. And this is not to say he did it, but no DNA of the West Memphis 3 was found.
But
so the only DNA, Terry Hobbs. Now, Terry Hobbs is not a very nice man, right? He was the last person reportedly to see the boys, and witness statement said that Stevie Branch was terrified of his stepfather, who was very violent. Stevie's sister Amanda believes that Terry Hobbs drugged her and abused her, as massive holes she can't remember are in her childhood. Mildred French, a neighbour, said that Hobbs broke into her home while she was having a bath. Mildred caught him in the house, and he started trying to shush her and grabbed her breasts and ran. Also known to have been seen to grab Stevie by the hair and punch him.
Oh, my God.
So this guy is not a very nice guy. Now, if I remember rightly, I just can't remember the guy's name. He had a friend as well, and his DNA was found on a tree stump near to the crime scene. He's a very interesting man, is Terry Hobbs. Can't understand why he's never, ever, even if he didn't commit the crime, why has he never been brought in as a person of interest?
Yeah, I mean, that is peculiar. And did he disappear? We looked it up, and he
I think it was 2019. There was a big thing, wasn't there, on the where you are? I looked it up, but that he disappeared for 4 months. Now I've found no information of him being found.
Yeah, I know. Me neither.
I was looking for it everywhere.
Me too.
Terry Hobbs is found. Well, either Terry Hobbs has reappeared after 4 months, or otherwise he still disappeared. I don't know.
I know. And I remember in that Paradise Lost, his ex-wife, I mean, this woman, granted, she's so upset that I think just this poor woman just wants somebody to be caught. But regardless, she said, thinking back, she would not be surprised. These were her words, if it was him, because of his abusive ways.
Yeah.
His ex did. I mean, it is curious why they didn't go over each and every suspect. There was so much mishandling from the beginning when Steve Jones took out the kids from the water. From that moment, it was a mess. Yeah, everything was.
The whole crime scene was ruined.
Yeah.
So, so these lads, these lads never had a chance, in finding what happened to them. I mean, it's an awful, terrible murder. I mean, I think two of the lads had 60 odd injuries, and one of them had 20 something injuries, and it's just an awful crime. I mean, it's terrible. I mean, and it's awful to think that probably the persons, it's got to be the persons. I think it's not the person.
Yeah,
it's got to be the persons who committed this. Are probably walking around scot-free, and have done it again since.
Absolutely.
I doubt they would do it once and never do it again.
That's it. And then we were talking about the genital mutilation of the young boy. I think it was Byers. They said Stevie Branch's face had been torn. Byers had been essentially castrated. But some pathologists thought that was from animal mutilation post-mortem. Some disagreed and said it was during the commission of the crime. If it had been done by a knife, the genital mutilation would have been more clean.
I did watch the video of the turtle expert.
Yeah.
Which was I thought it was quite horrific because he got the turtle to bite him. These are these turtles that were known to swim in the creek where the lads were found. I mean, they're quite big, these things, nasty teeth. So anyway, he got the turtle to bite him on the arm, and another guy had to prise the jaws off this guy's arm. And the actual injury looked very similar to the injury on the boys. So
maybe it was. I mean,
I'm not saying at all that it was turtles, but what I'm saying is it looked
similar,
very, very similar to what could have happened, post-mortem while they were naked in the water.
Oh, those poor kids. So horrible. And who was the guy in that Mr. Bojangles? Like, even if he wasn't a part, what happened? This case is definitely more questions than answers.
Well, I mean, I think if you were innocent, I mean, if you knew you were innocent, you're always going to look for ways of trying to. I mean, they appealed so many times, even during this time. I think, God, no, it must have been 10 times they appealed.
That's unbelievable.
And it was thrown out. And and in the end, they were offered this plea. And I mean, you're going to take it because it might be your only chance of ever getting out.
Oh, absolutely.
So and then you'd like to think that they could sort of like prove it wasn't them. And once again, Deb, I say if it wasn't them, because they haven't been proved to be innocent.
Absolutely.
So, there's always going to be that doubt. They may have done it.
That's true.
I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of support out there for them.
Yeah.
But, it could have been them. But the thing I was watching a documentary where this young lady, I can't remember her name. I wish I could, because she's a very good podcast, where she was going to do it from a completely unbiased opinion. And she came to the same sort of thing at the end, where she said, they may have done it, or they may not have done it. But the fact is, there wasn't enough evidence to convict them.
Yeah, that's the problem. There really was. I mean, if they had I wonder if they had taken some blood from that Mr. Bojangles, if they had taken a little bit more serious those, I know they were half-assed confessions, the two guys, Chris Morgan and Brian Holland, if they had taken that into consideration, done better investigative techniques on everything, I wonder what the answer would have come out. Maybe they would have gotten some more evidence if Steve Jones had left them in the water so that the crime investigator could go in and see what happened, because taking them out of the water, and then if it was warm that day, it just bloated them and did destroy who knows what was washed off. There was a knife.
Well, I mean, that's another thing. But one thing I would say in anybody's defense in the of the investigation, in 1993, the most thing they would have got was a blood type. Yeah. Nobody knew that DNA was going to be invented.
Yeah.
To be founded.
It was so early on.
We are very lucky that DNA was found. It was, invented, founded, whatever you want to call it. And that some of these crimes can be solved by samples that were kept. because nobody knew there was going to come.
Oh, yes.
Blood samples. So a lot of these cases are being solved by people like Paul Holes, who does his lovely show on the DNA of murder, to where he goes around lots of places and solves
My man, Paul Hottie Holes. I love it. I know. And it's so true. It's just like any policeman, because I'm always with, the homicide here. And it's so true. They go through these long things, but I don't know who it is, and it's just how it goes, because they never want to be on record as saying, a certain, and it just
I got told to watch that. Somebody told me to watch that. I watched 20 episodes waiting for him to find the killer.
That's so typical, because they don't want to be on saying the wrong thing. So it's always could be this or it could be that. And I get it. It's tough. It's such a high pressure job.
Blown it for me, you've blown it for me, Deb, because I lost half of my American listeners last time. So now I've probably got about 5 people listening.
I mean, I just see from the people that I know, I see the homicide team here, and my God, they work so damn hard. But I mean, we got so many murders. It's unbelievable. I don't know how they solve anything. It's just like, at this point, it's just kids shooting kids and people shooting people, and there's just no rhyme or reason. I don't know how they do it without losing their minds. I could never do it. I could not do that job. First of all, the kid thing would drive me nuts. That's hard. That's very hard. Like sex crimes, I don't know how they do that. It's just so upsetting, because you don't know. You just don't know. It's tough out there. It really is. And it seems like the violence is so much anymore. I mean, kids with these guns, oh my God, here, guns are so prevalent. It's terrible that these kids, I do like going to the range once in a while. I get that. But when you have little kids doing it, that's not so good. It's not a kid thing. You should definitely keep the guns away from the kids, 18 and older. No young kid should have a gun or access.
Well, as you know, being British, I am no way getting involved in gun arguments. Americans, because I want to keep
brutal.
them.
Keep this 5 subscribers.
Those 5 listeners and the dog, I'll probably end up with the dog. So I am no way getting involved in that. I've already upset everybody about hottie holes. And now I'm trying to get rid of the rest of anybody who might listen to me at any time. I don't know. But anyway, I take it all back. I love
Paul Holes guns, but it's all good now.
I'll never say a bad thing about Paul Holes again. I'd never heard of the guy. I thought he was just some bloke who was on satellite TV. I don't know. Next minute I know I've got everybody having a go at me.
Well, you know what it is?
What do I know about Paul Holes?
He's not only... I have to say, I listened to him and Billy Jensen, and he has such a nice way of speaking, and he is good looking. So you put that together, girls just go nuts for him, and they don't want to hear nothing about their Paul Hottie Holes, and that's
please,
what...
delete. When you delete everything
It'll
about
all
Paul
be
Hottie
good.
Holes, I don't want to be in more trouble.
We love him.
Oh dear.
It is funny though how people get, if he was like this, like plain looking guy, you wouldn't hear one iota about him. It's just because he's so damn cute,
I mean, we've got a British guy the same. I can't actually remember his name.
Oh yeah.
I can't remember his name. I mean, he was so good that he only lasted 2 series.
Oh.
Because he never solved anything. I mean, he was going around he wasn't hot and he wasn't Paul Holt.
He needs that.
He was this ex-police detective and journalist, and he was going around trying to solve these cases. Didn't solve any of them.
Oh my
God. I was like, here we go again. It's Paul Holes all over again.
It is true, man. I mean, it's such a tough gig. It really, I look at these investigators. Thank God he's retired. I don't know how people do it nowadays. It's so rampant right now. It's a shame. It's a damn shame what's going on out there. Just too many kids with too many guns, and
yeah. Well, it's mostly knife crime here.
Oh yeah.
We don't have. I mean, I don't know anything, but I mean, apparently we don't have that many guns here,
right?
But there's a lot of stabbing murders.
Damn.
In London. London's bad.
It's bad.
The Met Police they really have their work cut out in London.
That's a shame.
But anyway, anybody out there who likes Morbid and likes Paul Holes, I apologize.
Oh yeah, no, they're good. Oh, and they had a really good. I'm telling you, I listened to I don't think it was the West Memphis 3, but there was some story that Morbid and the Murder Squad did together, and it was really good. I wish I could remember I don't remember what they were going over, but it was a great episode. It really was.
Well, I mean, I did listen to their Pinkerton. Is it Pinkerton, the pig farmer bloke?
Oh, yeah.
I listened to Morbid's story on the... I think his name was Will Pinkerton.
Will Pinkerton? It could be.
The bloke who fed everybody to the pigs.
Oh, that story.
That was good. I mean, honestly, Morbid do a fantastic job. I'm only just having a go at them because my daughter listens to them.
Yeah, that's right.
That's it. Because their podcast is excellent. So I would never call them. They really are good.
No, that's it. That's the correct. Yeah. Wow.
And, have we finished that then? Do you think we've covered that?
Yeah, I think we covered it pretty good because the main thing was what happened to the boys, what happened to Damien Eccles and the West Memphis 3, and then the fact that the worst part of this story is that it's, like you said, it could have been them. There's never been enough proof here or there. But we're never going to know because they consider it closed. So it's a shame because those 3 boys got killed. And that one mother, I see her the most. I believe it's Steve. I
wouldn't say the misfortunes of watching that documentary because it's eye-opening. It's the first, I don't know, what is it? 2 or 3 minutes?
Yeah, yes.
It's awful.
You're right. I did that one story about his last name was Heimbaugh, and he went missing. His mother had to go somewhere. He wanted to see a brush fire. It wasn't too far from here, about 60 miles in Jersey. And Mark Heimbaugh, and he wanted to see a brush fire, and his mother said, "Okay, I'll be back in 15 minutes." But because of the brush fire, she was gone longer. When she got back, he was gone, never to be found. And to this day, she never knows what happened to him. And then this horrible man who was a child molester, he's in jail. He admitted it to this prostitute, but they don't know if it's true confession. But that whole story had got me so bad. And I promised someone I would do it. But as I was doing it, I was getting so overwhelmed. It is very hard with the kids because it's so horrible. I don't know how mothers get through it. I guess you have no choice, but it's horrible. For any mother, I just wish them peace because I don't, that sucks. That sucks.
I agree with you. And I think that is a lot of the reason why I normally do Victorian murders.
Yeah.
It's a bit like a safety thing.
Yeah.
I don't have to get involved with the characters and that and with a Victorian thing because there's not really any footage, photos, anything like that. And I don't get too involved. Like I once listened to a full thing on the Moors murderers and I'm never going back there. Oh. It's awful.
Evil.
I honestly don't ever want to cover that again. It's awful. It's terrible. Those poor people, I mean, not just the poor people who were involved in that, losing their children, but those poor people in the jury that had to listen to them tapes. Don't think I could never have done that. It's awful. And it's a case I never want to cover with anybody is Myra Hindley and Ian Brady.
They're
He's
evil.
Devil incarnate.
Yeah, you're right.
He's a devil.
They even look evil.
Nothing nice to say about that pair.
No.
At all.
And You saying that reminds me there was this toolbox murders.
Oh, yeah.
The one thing that you just said is when they were trying to make sure that it was them, they had a tape of they made a tape.
I listened to it. It's awful.
Oh my God. They had to show the mother to make sure it was the daughter. I don't know how the mother listened to that tape. I would kill him. You're right. Yeah. I would kill him myself.
Yeah, I know. Your bare hands. Yeah.
With my bare hands. I would rip.
It's awful. You know, I mean, I feel, you know, there's certain crimes, isn't there, that you just know that you don't want to listen to them again.
You're right. I couldn't listen to the toolbox one again. No way.
No.
I'm more into the psychology of.
Me too.
I get some of oh man, my stomach gets queasy at some of these. How can you look at a screaming person and that's your turn on? I don't. Yeah. It just makes no. You gotta be sick in the head. I mean, sick.
Absolutely.
You know, it's rough.
It's rough. It
is.
I better go because for me to ring. I mean, because it's now. I mean, we've had the clocks forward last night, so it's now 7:15.
Oh my God!
And I better ring my parents.
All right, have a good one, Lyndon. That's Lyndon. Better at bedtime.
I've got no idea how to turn this off. have a lovely day. Look,
you too, Lyndon. Have a great one.
See you, Dad.
Good night.
Good night.
Welcome to Brew Crime. Join me, Mike, and guests as we explore the world of true crime. This is a podcast where we pick a theme, cover a few cases, and pair it with a craft beer. You can find us on social media at Brewcrime or our website at brewcrime.com, or you can find us on any podcast app at Brewcrime Podcast. Join us as we discuss the horrible crimes that surround us and maybe tip a bottle back as you do.
That's for Brew Crime. And also thank you, Lyndon. Thank you, my son, for setting this up. Both of these will be coming out this week. We have the Sifrits and we have the West Memphis 3. Next, I don't know. I've been getting requests since Christmas. I had some of them written down. Natalie Wood is one of them. I'm going to do Natalie Wood. She might be next. It's a crapshoot, and there's reasons that they're either on or off. I want to do the Wonderland murders at some point, but there's a lot of Philadelphia things coming in, so get to all of it, and I will go through the listener suggestions again. This is Debbie Q, and you're listening to The Right Shoe.